September 8th meeting of the Shelby Township Planning Commission. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Dallo?
Here.
Ms. DeSico?
Here.
Ms. Casali?
Here.
Mr. Bernardi?
Here.
Mr. Opone?
Here.
Mr. Waxmansky?
Here.
Mr. Vire?
Here.
Chairman Moffett, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Next item is approval of the agenda. And before I ask for a motion, let me remind folks that there is something pressing this evening that some folks may want to see. So adding something to the agenda may not be appropriate. With that, moved
Support.
and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Wynn, for the only one that's chuckling at my attempted humor. Next, approval of minutes from the August 25th meeting. If there are no corrections.
So moved, Mr.
Moved by Wismonski, support by Opone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, first order of business, correspondence from a letter from Greg Windingland, Lombardo Companies regarding Lancaster at Central Park site plan amendment. Mr. Wynn, do you want to set it up?
Yes, let me set it up and then maybe Greg can respond a little bit more. We did approve the site plan not too long ago for the next phase of Central Park. And the developer is requesting some clarification regarding the rear yard setbacks encroachments for the single-family lots. There's a required rear yard setback of 35 feet. Within that, we do allow a 15-foot projection for decks and patios. After talking to Mr. Windingland, they have some specific building features they'd like to introduce in this phase that go beyond just decks and patios in that extension area. And I'd like to maybe let Greg explain a few of the details on that.
Okay. And if I could get your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Greg Windingland with Lombardo Homes, 51237 Danview Technology Court, Shelby Township, and I will try to be very brief, Mr. Moffett, in respect of what you said earlier. The correspondence was 2 pages, and then it was followed by a couple of pictures that I trust everybody has received. The second page of the original correspondence was a sketch or a series of 3 sketches. The one on the far left was the projection that Mr. Wynn talked about that had been originally approved as part of the site plan. It measured 14 by 12 feet. It's called a sunroom. It's an enclosed sunroom. If you look at the if you look at the photographs that were then supplemented, the very first one is a sunroom. It's 1 story. It's completely brick enclosed, which would be what we would do at Lancaster at Central Park. What we're asking for clarification on is 2 other projections that we have. One is a covered porch, one is a covered patio, and we have examples of the 2 of those as well. We also show the relative size and the square footage. They're comparable. One's a little bigger, one's a little bit smaller than what's already approved. The one thing that I would like to call your attention to on the covered patio pictures, that is an actual representation of the covered patio. On the covered porch picture that we show, we actually show a covered deck because that's in a walkout configuration. So that's why you see it elevated and you see the absence of brick. At Lancaster or Central Park, we do not have any walkout or daylight opportunities, so it would be at grade and it would be 4-sided brick wherever there was any type of vertical structure to it. So I just wanted to make sure that was understood by the Commission.
Okay.
With that, any other questions or anything, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Great. Any questions from anyone? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Support.
I move to approve a modification to the site plan for Lancaster at Central Park, site plan number 14-11, PUD-1, Lancaster at Central Park, to permit modifications to the approved rear yard setback encroachments for covered decks, patios, and sunrooms.
Support.
Okay, moved by Moore, support by Opone. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Opone?
Yes.
Commissioner Vire?
Yes.
Commissioner Waxmansky?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Casali?
Yes.
Commissioner DeSico?
Yes.
Commissioner Dallu?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Good luck.
Thank you and good night. Go Lions, right?
Okay, next we have 2 items under site plan. The first, number 14-07, Roberto Vitale, Pine Brook Estates. If the petitioner is here, a representative, you can come up, give your name and address and reasons for or what you're requesting.
Tom Kellogg, Lehner Finland Associates, 17001 19 Mile Road, Clinton Township.
What are you here to ask of us this evening?
Asking for our site plan approval tonight. We had previously submitted a site plan.
Why don't you tip that microphone up a little bit? Okay.
We've previously submitted the site plan, and we've made the changes per the engineers, the township requirements, fire department, and we're asking for approval tonight.
Okay. Mr. Nguyen?
The basic design of this hasn't changed. It's still 11 lots. What has changed is that at one time they were showing a private road with not the standard road cross-section. Now they're showing public road cross-section through here, 60-foot right-of-way, which is what we required. So that put the setbacks, everything back to the normal state that it should have been at, and that many of the comments we had the previous time were related to that. The only other comment we have is regarding whether it should be public or private. We don't have any objection if this is a private road. There's really nowhere for this road to connect. It can't go south because you have Thunder Bay condominiums, and it likely can't connect west from a practical standpoint based on the lot configuration. However, we do strongly recommend that this road be terminated in a standard cul-de-sac, and that will work there without compromising any lots. The only other comments we had, tree permit will be required, uniform garage placement plan should be shown, and we do ask for one street tree for every lot. Let me explain the process. This is a preliminary approval. If your Planning Commission grants this, and they'll move on to engineering. Once the engineering plans are approved, they'll come back here, we'll validate that all those agency comments have been met, and we'll grant them final approval. That means they can begin construction. So there's been some questions raised, I know, from the last presentation about the feasibility of the drainage. There's no retention pond. They'll go directly into the county drain that runs across the Thunder Bay condominium sites. The way this process works is that, Mr. Kellogg can correct me if I'm wrong here, but many years ago the township engaged in a study, and they have a drain district called the Southeast Consolidated Drain District, which I think encompasses 4 to 6 square miles in this area of the township. It was determined at that time that the drain would be adequate for this particular, for all the undeveloped vacant property, and they will access it. I know I've had some extensive conversations with some residents in the area, and there's some concerns is that still work, based on current conditions? And that will be evaluated by our engineer and Macomb County Public Works Commissioner before they're allowed to begin construction. And I've certainly pledged the opportunity to work with these residents to make sure they're satisfied, and even invite our engineer out on the site to meet with them to make sure that what they're observing, is not a flaw in the design or some problems on the site. So we will continue to address their concerns. But at this point, I believe they are ready to move forward from preliminary into preparation of final design plans with the cul-de-sac.
Great. Does your client have any objections to the?
We do object to the request for a cul-de-sac. It does impact the N2 lots quite a bit. It reduces their buildable area. There are other condominium developments in the township that have these hammerhead turnarounds, and they do not meet the fire department's requirements, which is 120 feet. We've modified our hammerhead to have a full 120 feet for fire department turnaround or emergency vehicle turnaround.
Mr. Nguyen, do you have any reaction to that?
Well, my only reaction would be if they want to give us a design that our fire department says they'll live with, I guess I wouldn't object to that, but I overlaid a design on this that I think would work without impacting their lots. I like to see a design and a couple of alternatives, before we say abandon the idea of a full cul-de-sac, because I don't think it will.
Okay. Any questions for the petitioner?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Byer?
the abutting zoning is R1A,
Yes.
and this is R1C.
Yes.
And I'm looking at the square footage on these lots. Does this meet all of the requirements for R1C?
Yes, it does.
How do you say it meets all of the requirements when, are you taking them all together and dividing them by 11?
No, the minimum requirement for lot area is 12,000 square feet. The minimum lot frontage is 80 feet wide, and they meet both of those.
Well, in fact, some of them exceed that.
No, they do exceed it, yes, yes. They exceed the minimums.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Wexmanski.
question to Mr. Nguyen. So these other lots that are R1A, is it our intention to downgrade those eventually to R1C also, or
I don't think it will be
a
necessary.
disconnect along the?
Well, this is one of those remaining parcels that was big enough to develop on its own, Mr. Wekmanski. The rest of the lots all are I would call acreage-type parcels that front on 22 Mile Road. This is a little bit of a disconnect, but there'll always be that. And this seemed it would lend itself when you consider you have multiple behind it, you have multiple across the street. It seemed like a reasonable transition when we rezoned this property. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago.
So the plan is to keep all the other lots R1A?
Absolutely. Unless somebody would come in and assemble those properties and come back. That would be the only way that would be feasible to consider rezoning anything else. And that's not an easy task since they're all developed.
I just can't see downgrading the township.
That decision's already been made.
I understand that.
Okay, any other questions?
It's my understanding that a master deed has not yet been submitted for review, so attorney comments would be that a master deed should be submitted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Casale.
I move to approve site plan number 14-07 for Pine Brook Estates, subject to the submission of a revised plan addressing all remaining Department and Planning Commission comments, as well as the submission of a master deed.
Support.
Moved by DeSico, moved by Casale, support by Moore. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Casale?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Dalu? Commissioner DeSico?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Vire?
Yes.
Commissioner Rapone?
Yes.
Commissioner Wexmanski?
No.
And the chair votes yes.
And may I ask a question regarding the cul-de-sac? Is that something that we can discuss with Mr. Nguyen
Yes.
when we decide, like,
Yeah, and then
and
he'll
show him the
he
building
will-
envelopes and how
he
it
will-
impacts?
He will get it to the fire department and seek their comment, and I followed up
Okay.
as I asked him. And if the fire department objects to that design, I guess then we're back to square one, and we'll be back before here to review an alternative.
I'd be happy to arrange a meeting with Mr. Kellogg and our fire marshal and myself to go, and our engineer to go over those.
Okay.
And I do have, I'm not an engineer, but I did do a couple sketches, and I want Tom to look at this later, not for tonight, but this is
Okay.
how I arrived at a conclusion.
But I'm correct, though, that if the fire department says no, that they will come back.
Yes,
before
and I will share the response with the commission under
Either way.
director's report. We can do that for the next couple of weeks. Okay?
Great, thank you very much.
Very good. Next item, site plan number 04-65, Crystal Pines Multiple Family Revised Building Plans.
Hi, Michael Delora, 55899 Apple Lane, Shelby Township. We're here tonight to request redesign in order to add additional units to the project. With the correspondence, I've attached the before and afters of the floor plans and elevations. The first page is the proposed new elevation. Second page is the first floor of the redesign of the proposed.
Hey, why don't you explain to us what you're doing? Like, you don't have mock-ups to show. Because there are people that are viewing this, so if you could explain what you're proposing, just roughly what the changes in the elevations are going to be.
Okay.
What are you proposing, the changes in the 4 units that you're going to
Okay,
develop?
well, the elevation is substantially the same. What we've done is raise the first floor level to mimic the second floor design that's and we would park entirely underneath both floors. So there'd be one common garage area that's just below grade, and then
And your current units have attached garages, several attached garages?
Yes.
Okay.
Did everybody get the, okay.
Yeah, but see, you're referring to just a page when,
Okay.
when the township for the purview of its residents is tapes this and airs it and shows it. So
Okay.
that's why, you know, if you either have something you can refer to that people can see or actually discuss it a little bit, so at least they have some sense of what you're asking
I
for.
understand, okay. So if anybody has any questions, I can,
Okay, you're going from 24 units to 32?
yes.
Now, what's the square footage? Is the square footage going to change at all of the units, or are they going to be?
No.
How about the footprints? So the footprints of the buildings are going to be exactly the same?
It's going to be exactly the same. We would push the roof height up about 5 feet, depending on engineering review,
Okay.
because the garages will be, instead of being at grade, they'll be 5 feet below grade. Roof will be pushed up 5 feet to accommodate the garage.
So you're sort of adding an extra level to put these to have this common garage?
Well, right now, the garages are at street level, so we'll make it an underground parking by 5 feet.
Okay.
We have basements in there now, excavated for basements in the past, and instead of having basements, we were just going to move the garage down below grade.
Okay. Mr. Nguyen?
Chairman, I don't have any objection to the changing of the building type, because you have some pictures that I took when I went out there, and they're attractive elevation to begin with, and I think it remains an attractive elevation. There's some continuity in the design, so no problem. It's just a matter of, I call the rest of the items more housekeeping. I would like to see a revised site plan that's up to date, that reflects, even though it's a new footprint, showing where the new buildings would be, and verifying that all the setbacks are the same, because the old plan has been imaged and there's really no way of comfortably verifying that. I'd also need updated density calculations to determine if the number of units, although it's increased, still complies with the current zoning. And there, as Mr. Delora indicated, there are some grade changes. I'd want that to refer to our engineer to make sure that that's not creating a drainage issue with any of the neighboring properties. And the applicant summary referred to an increased greenbelt area, and I don't know what that's referring to, so I'd like to see that. So I wouldn't object to a conditional approval, getting a revised plan. I could check it off, make sure that we have all the proper documentation, and send it on for an engineering review.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to start with the attorney. Speak so infrequently. I feel privileged. She must not be a football fan. But.
I have another master deed comment, and that is that this revised site plan may also require an amendment to the master deed.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Waxmansky.
Yes, question to the petitioner.
Yes.
Where is visitor parking?
On the street.
Are the streets wide enough, Mr. Nguyen, to accommodate parking on both sides?
Not on both sides.
Is there a restriction, any place that says there'll be parking on one side only?
We could ask our fire department to look at that. Typically, they would only want them on one side. They'd ask to have no parking signs installed on one side. I'd be happy to add that to the list of things to double check.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Moore.
I move to approve the revised site plan for Crystal Pines Multiple Family, site plan number 4-65, subject to the submission of a revised plan addressing all department comments, along with amendment to the master deed.
Support.
Moore, support by Vire. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Moore.
Yes.
Commissioner Vire.
Yes.
Commissioner Pone.
Yes.
Commissioner Waxmansky.
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi.
Yes.
Commissioner Casale.
Yes.
Commissioner DeSico.
Yes.
Commissioner Dalu.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
Next, Planning Director's report. First, the August Administrative Approval Report.
During the last month, we had a high of 23 sign applications and 3 temporary use permits. So that's just a summary of activities. The other,
Master plan.
yeah, master plan update. I think I did introduce this to the commission back in spring of this year, but we've been existing development activities kind of push this to the side. State law, specifically the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, requires us to evaluate our master plan every 5 years. Doesn't require you to update it, just requires you to evaluate and determine if an update's necessary. So our last plan was done in 2009, and we are in the point where we need to make that evaluation. So I've prepared an outline identifying the key elements of the plan and the sections that I believe would need to be updated. And if the commission is satisfied that this is the scope of what I've proposed, then we would begin the process of soliciting quotations or qualifications from qualified consultants to help us do that. That's how we've typically done it in the past. The last plan, we did some of it in-house. I don't believe we have that opportunity this time. So we would entertain a consultant to assist us, and I would be looking for the Planning Commission to participate in that process as we did before. Mr. Moffett may remember that we did that. And we had a subcommittee that interviewed the consultants and made the selection, made the recommendation to the board. And I'd like to do that again. That was very successful. So what we would do is, if the Planning Commission is satisfied, I would like a motion supporting the outline. I do want to share that with the board because I don't want to go ahead without that, and we do have money in the budget to begin starting that process. It'll probably take 2 budget years or portions of it.
Okay. Any questions on the outline? Seeing none, is there
Make the motion as outlined by the planner.
and is there support?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, with that, business from the floor. Does anyone wish to address? You need your name and address, and you've got 3 minutes.
My name is Jim Verkinderen. I live at 5083 Galaxy in the Starlight subdivision between 24 and 25 Mile Road, between Mound and Shelby Road. I represent between 500 to 700 homes. I know that because I was walking through. I'm a representative on a committee of CARDS, Citizens Against Residential Drilling, and I ran out after 500 copies, and it's too late to get more copies made, but it's not too late for the people to be able to still follow the buses that are going to leave. It's too late to order more buses, but they still can join us tomorrow morning about 8:30. The buses leave at 9, but be there by 8:30 so that we can get it organized so that you can follow us to Lansing to make sure that Senator or Governor Schneider supports the fact that we're against drilling in residential areas, and for him to come out and say that he's in support of it before his election, because by the time the bill gets passed by Mr. Brandenburg, it'll be past the re-election time. So we want him to come out and say at least that he supports this. Otherwise, I'm going to tell you the truth, organize the people in Rochester Hills, Shelby Township, Clinton Township, Macomb Township, Washington Township, and every other township that wants me to represent them, to organize them, to march on Schneider and to write him with letters and to jam his phone lines with calls that were against this. And if he wants to get reelected, to support it. Otherwise, we're going to vote for a Democrat to run against him. After that, I'd like to read this letter. And bear with me if I go past 3 minutes, I might be 4. Dear council members, I am part of the group of homeowners that have banded together to form CARDS, Citizens Against Residential Drilling. I have been approached by other groups for donating time and money to fight the drilling on 25 Mile and DeQuinder. Please, we must unify our efforts to fight this. There is no need for any money donations at this time. Shelby Township Council has hired the best lawyers and Mr. Christopher Grobel to be a professional witness in court. We do not need to, but we do need to donate you to donate your time in getting the word out. We now can prove damages, losses, and injury to our property, but the fight with the state of Michigan is far from over. To get a court hearing could take us into 2015. So Senator Brandenburg has introduced bill number 1026. That's bill number 1026 in the state Senate. If you want a copy of the whole bill, call Senator Brandenburg. His phone number is 517-373-7670. That again is 517-343-7670. We need to get the bill through, but this may take us until 2015. We need you to call Governor Schneider and tell him to support this bill number 1026. That's bill number 1026. We want Governor Schneider to come out publicly and say that he supports the bill before the November election, His number is 1-517-373-7670. That's 1-517-373-7670. We need everyone to call Governor Snyder and write him in Lansing. Jam his telephone line with calls that we support bill number 1026 and tell him to push the bill through and support it publicly if he wants to get reelected this fall. The reason the bill is only for the township of 70,000 people or more, which means only Shelby Township, Macomb Township, and Clinton Township are covered, is because Mr. Brandenburg wants to get his foot in the door so that the township can call Senator Brandenburg, and he will push to get through this bill so that the drilling companies have to get permission from the townships before they start. We're not against drilling. What we want is that the townships have to be
You're over
answered.
4 minutes now, so wrap it up, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
We want the townships to have the say first. Presently, it's totally controlled by the state. It's too late for bus rides, but you can drive yourself by following the buses. The buses leave at 9 o'clock, but be there by 8:30 a.m. Last, I need volunteers to write me so that the roads that they can cover in Starlight Subdivision and future flyers. I walk 5 miles a day, 4 days in a row, but have bad knees and couldn't make the last 200 to 300 homes in the Starlight Subdivision. We need a mailbox, and I don't know if, Mr. Wynn, if this comes underneath this committee's jurisdiction. Okay, then I'll be quiet and write it to you.
All right,
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I'll entertain one more motion.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Support.
Dowd, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we're adjourned.